Noel Merritt stood knee-deep in raw sewage, watching 20,000 gallons of human waste flow through a broken main line, and all he could think about was his wife's new perfume. The expensive kind. The kind she'd never worn for him. The October wind cut through his coveralls as he directed the suction hose into the trench. His phone buzzed against his chest, a location alert from the tracker he'd placed in Dana's BMW 3 weeks ago. She was at the Clearwater Lake Resort again, during work hours, for the 4th time this month. "Boss, we got this under control," Rick Boone called from the excavator. His foreman had been with Merritt Sanitation for 8 years, loyal as a dog and twice as quiet. "You want to head out early?" Noel pulled off his work gloves, never taking his eyes off the flowing waste. "No, I want to see this through to the end." The sewage system was simple. Pressure built up until something gave way. Then everything came flooding out, and somebody had to clean up the mess. He'd been cleaning up messes his whole life, first in the Army Corps of Engineers, then building his sanitation company from nothing. Now he was 43, successful, respected in Clinton Ridge, and his wife was screwing around with some rich, pretty boy. His phone buzzed again. A text from Dana. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." Noel stared at the message. She was 20 miles away at a lakeside resort, and she thought he was stupid enough to believe her lies. He'd built a business by understanding pressure and flow, cause and effect. Dana had no idea what kind of pressure she was about to face. "Rick," he called out, sliding his phone back into his pocket, "when we're done here, I need you to run some numbers on industrial pumping equipment. High-pressure, high-volume stuff. What kind of job we bidding on?" Noel watched the last of the sewage disappear down the main line. "The biggest cleanup of my career." That evening, Noel sat in his home office reviewing security footage from the hidden camera he'd installed in their garage. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m., exactly when Dana claimed to be in a client meeting downtown. Instead, she was backing her BMW into their garage with a black Escalade following close behind. The video showed Dana getting out of her car, smoothing her skirt, and walking to the passenger door of the Escalade. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, tall, tan, probably mid-40s. Noel recognized him from the photos on Dana's phone that he'd seen when she left it charging in the kitchen. Colby Duvall, owner of 3 car dealerships in the county, married to some socialite named Lacey, the kind of man who wore gold watches and spoke loudly at restaurants. In the footage, Dana pressed herself against Colby's chest, tilting her head back for a kiss that lasted 30 seconds. Then they climbed into the back seat of the Escalade, and the windows fogged up. Noel paused the video. His wife of 15 years, the woman who'd stopped kissing him goodbye 2 months ago, was having an affair with a married car salesman. He felt nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, no surprise. Just the cold calculation that had served him well in business and war. He opened a new browser tab and searched for Duvall Automotive Group. The company website showed 3 locations, all flashy showrooms with gleaming cars and smiling salespeople. Colby's bio described him as a pillar of the community and devoted family man. Another tab, Lacey Duvall Clinton Ridge. Society page photos showed a blonde woman in designer dresses at charity functions. She looked like the type who'd married for money and status, not love. In one photo, she stood beside Colby at a hospital fundraiser, her smile never reaching her eyes. Noel closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen. Dana was at the stove, stirring pasta sauce and humming. She'd changed into yoga pants and a tank top, the same outfit she'd worn to seduce him on their honeymoon. Now she was wearing it after screwing another man. "How was your day?" she asked without turning around. "Productive. Fixed a major backup on Morrison Street. Sometimes you have to dig deep to find the source of the problem." Dana ladled sauce over the pasta. "I had 3 client meetings today. The mortgage market is crazy right now. Everyone wants to refinance before rates go up again." She was a good liar. Smooth, confident, specific details. If he hadn't seen the footage, he might have believed her. Instead, he ate dinner and listened to her fabricate an entire afternoon of mortgage applications and property appraisals. "I might have to work late tomorrow, too," Dana said, twirling pasta around her fork. "Big client coming in from out of town? What's his name?" "Her name, Jennifer Walsh. She's relocating from Phoenix, needs a construction loan for a custom home." Another lie. Noel nodded and took another bite. "Sounds like good money. It could be huge for us. I mean, for me, for my commission." The slip was deliberate. Dana had been distancing herself from their marriage for months. Separate bank accounts, separate social circles, separate everything. She was planning something bigger than an affair. After dinner, Noel kissed her forehead and said goodnight. She didn't kiss him back. Instead, she grabbed her laptop and headed to the guest bedroom, claiming she needed to prepare for tomorrow's fake meeting. Noel waited until he heard her shower running, then went to his workshop in the garage. He pulled out his cell phone and dialed a number he'd memorized 20 years ago. Kellerman Law, a gruff voice answered. Tom, it's Noel Merritt. Jesus, Noel, haven't heard from you since the Patterson divorce. What's going on? Tom Kellerman had been Noel's roommate at State before law school. Now he specialized in divorce cases and asset protection. They'd remain friends despite seeing each other maybe twice a year. I need some advice. Hypothetically. How hypothetical? Not very. Tom sighed. Come by the office tomorrow, and Noel, if this is about what I think it's about, start documenting everything. Bank statements, phone records, credit card bills, everything. Already started. Good man. See you at 10. Noel hung up and stared at the spot where Dana's car had been parked that afternoon. In the corner of the garage sat his work truck, a modified Ford F550 with a 3,000-gallon tank and high-pressure pump system. He'd built it himself for the biggest jobs, the ones that required serious equipment. Tomorrow, he'd start building the biggest job of his life. Tom Kellerman's law office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian house downtown. The waiting room smelled like old leather and disappointment. Noel sat across from his friend's desk, watching Tom flip through a manila folder. Based on what you've told me, she's planning to clean you out, Tom said. The separate accounts, the sudden interest in real estate investments, the affair. It's textbook. How textbook? She's probably been moving money for months, small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts. The affair gives her emotional justification for divorce, and if she's working with a loan officer, they might be planning something with your property. Noel leaned forward. What kind of something? Refinancing. She could take out a second mortgage using your house as collateral, especially if she has access to your financial information. If she files for divorce after the loan closes, she keeps half the house value plus whatever she borrowed. Can she do that without my signature? Depends on how the deed is structured. If you're both on the title, but she has power of attorney for business purposes. Tom shrugged. I've seen it happen. Noel pulled out his phone and showed Tom the security footage from the garage. The man she's with owns 3 car dealerships. Duval Automotive. Tom watched the video, his expression darkening. Colby Duval. I know that name. He's been in the news lately, some controversy about his financing practices. Subprime auto loans, carnivory interest rates. Carnivory how? He targets people with bad credit, sells them overpriced cars with impossible payment terms. When they default, he repossesses the vehicle and sells it again. Same car, multiple sufferers. Sounds like a real prince. He's also rumored to have connections with some unsavory characters, money laundering possibly. Nothing proven, but the FBI has been sniffing around his dealerships. Tom closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. Here's what you need to do. First, protect your assets. Transfer business ownership to a trust. Open new bank accounts. Revoke any financial powers of attorney. Second, document everything. I mean, everything. And third, be very careful. If Duval is involved in illegal activities, this could get dangerous. Danger goes both ways. Noel, I know that look. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Let the legal system handle this. The legal system doesn't handle betrayal. It handles paperwork. Tom stood up and walked to the window. I can't be your lawyer if you're planning something illegal. I'm not planning anything illegal. I'm planning to give my wife and her boyfriend exactly what they deserve. That's what scares me. Noel left the law office with a clear understanding of his situation. Dana was positioning herself to steal everything he'd built, using her professional connections and her rich boyfriend's influence. She thought she was playing chess while he played checkers. She had no idea he'd been playing war games. The Clinton Ridge Country Club sat on a hill overlooking the lake, its manicured grounds dotted with expensive cars and even more expensive people. Noel had never been a member. He preferred honest work to social climbing, but he'd done enough septic system repairs at members' homes to know their dirty secrets. Tonight was the annual Harvest Charity Gala, a fundraiser for the local children's hospital. Dana had bought them tickets months ago, back when she still pretended to care about their marriage. Now she was attending alone, claiming Noel was too busy with the emergency job. Instead, Noel sat in his truck across the street, watching the valet parking area through binoculars. He'd been there for an hour when Dana's BMW pulled up to the red carpet entrance. She stepped out wearing a black cocktail dress he'd never seen before, something that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. 5 minutes later, a black Escalade arrived. Colby Duvall emerged wearing a tuxedo and crap-eating grin, escorting a blonde woman in a silver gown. Lacey Duvall looked like a runway model, all sharp angles and perfect posture. She smiled for the photographers, but her eyes were cold as winter. Noel lowered the binoculars and started his truck. He had work to do. The Duvall mansion sat on 3 acres of lakefront property, all stone and glass and pretentious architecture. The kind of house that screamed new money to anyone with taste. Noel parked his truck in the shadows of the tree line and pulled on his work coveralls. The septic system was located 50 yards behind the main house, a concrete bunker that handled waste from 12 bathrooms and a commercial-grade kitchen. Noel had installed similar systems for other wealthy clients, so he knew exactly how they worked. He also knew exactly how to make them fail. The main pump had an electrical control panel protected by a simple padlock. Noel cut it with bolt cutters and opened the metal housing. Inside, color-coded wires connected the pump motor to its control circuits. He traced the power supply to the float switch, the device that turned the pump on when waste levels rose too high. Using a small screwdriver, he disconnected the float switch wiring and reconnected it to the pump's reverse circuit. Now, instead of activating when waste levels rose, the pump would run in reverse, sending sewage back into the house. He also adjusted the pressure relief valve, increasing the system's internal pressure by 30%. When the pump started running backward, the increased pressure would force waste through every drain in the house. The beauty of the sabotage was its subtlety. The system would work fine for several hours until enough waste accumulated to trigger the float switch. Then it would turn into a nightmare that would take days to clean up and cost thousands to repair. Noel closed the control panel and walked back to his truck. As he drove away, he checked his watch. The gala would run until midnight. Colby and Lacey would return home to find their mansion flooded with sewage from basement to attic. It was a start. The next morning, Noel's phone rang while he was having coffee. The caller ID showed Duvall Automotive. "Merritt Sanitation," he answered. "This is Colby Duvall. I need emergency service at my home. We have a major sewage backup. The whole house is flooded." Noel smiled into his coffee cup. "That sounds serious. When did you first notice the problem?" "We got home from an event last night and the smell was unbelievable. There's waste coming up through every drain in the house. My insurance company says they won't cover the cleanup until a certified sanitation company documents the damage." "I see. Well, Mr. Duvall, we're pretty booked up this week. Emergency calls usually run about triple our normal rates. I don't care about the cost. I need this fixed today. Let me check my schedule." Noel pretended to flip through a calendar. "I might be able to squeeze you in this afternoon. Say around 3 o'clock? Thank you. And please bring whatever equipment you need. This is the worst backup I've ever seen." Noel hung up and grinned. Phase 1 was complete. At 3 o'clock, he pulled his work truck into the Duvall driveway. The smell hit him before he'd even shut off the engine. Raw sewage mixed with expensive perfume and disinfectant. Several windows were open, and he could see people in hazmat suits moving around inside the house. Colby met him at the front door, looking like he hadn't slept. His hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, and his face had the pale, exhausted look of a man facing catastrophe. "Mr. Merritt? Thank God you're here. This is a disaster." "Call me Noel. Let me take a look at the system." They walked around to the back of the house, where the septic tank's concrete lid had been removed. The smell was overwhelming, even by Noel's standards. Brown water bubbled up from the tank, overflowing onto the manicured lawn. "Has anyone been inside the control panel?" Noel asked. "No, we haven't touched anything. Do you think someone could have sabotaged it?" Noel examined the cut padlock, shaking his head gravely. "This lock's been cut clean through. Looks like vandalism to me. You got any enemies, Mr. Duvall?" Colby's face went white. "Enemies? Why would I have enemies?" "Well, someone knew exactly how to make your system fail. This isn't random damage, it's precise. Professional." Noel opened the control panel and pretended to diagnose the problem. "Yeah, your float switch has been rewired to run the pump backward. Plus, they increased your pressure settings. Whoever did this wanted maximum damage." "Can you fix it?" "Sure, but it'll take time. The whole system needs to be pumped out, disinfected, and reset. Plus, you'll need professional cleanup inside the house. Carpets, furniture, drywall. You're looking at $50,000 minimum, maybe twice that." Colby staggered backwards, sitting heavily on a stone garden bench. "50,000? My insurance? Won't cover vandalism unless you file a police report. And even then, they'll want to investigate who did it and why. Noel packed up his tools. I can start the cleanup tomorrow morning. Cash only, considering the circumstances. Cash only? Why? Well, vandalism cases can get complicated. Insurance companies start asking questions. Police get involved. Reporters show up. Some of my clients prefer to handle these situations privately. Colby nodded slowly. Private sounds good. Very private. Thought you might feel that way. I'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. with a full crew. Have the money ready. As Noel drove away, he called Tom Kellerman. It's starting, he said when Tom answered. What's starting? The pressure. Soon everyone's going to see what happens when the system fails. Dana came home that evening in a foul mood. She'd spent the day dealing with difficult clients and impossible deadlines, code words for whatever crisis was happening in her affair. She barely acknowledged Noel when he kissed her hello. How was your day? He asked, setting her wine glass on the counter. Terrible. One of my biggest clients is having some kind of personal emergency. Might affect a major deal I've been working on. What kind of emergency? I can't discuss client confidentiality, but let's just say some people need to be more careful about who they trust. Noel nodded sympathetically. Trust is everything in business. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Dana took a large sip of wine. Exactly. And some people are finding out that their past mistakes have consequences. What kind of consequences? The expensive kind. She was talking about Colby's sewage disaster, but couldn't say so directly. Instead, she was fishing for information, trying to gauge whether Noel suspected anything about their relationship. Well, I hope everything works out for your client, Noel said. In my experience, most problems can be solved if you're willing to do the work. Some problems are more complicated than others. True, but I've found that the biggest problems usually have the simplest solutions. You just have to be willing to get your hands dirty. Dana studied his face, looking for hidden meaning. You seem to be working a lot of emergency calls lately. Business is good. People keep having problems with their systems backing up. Amazing how many blockages happen when you least expect them. Blockages. Pressure builds up over time. People ignore the warning signs, thinking everything's fine. Then one day, the whole system fails and makes a terrible mess. Dana finished her wine in one gulp. I think I'll take a bath and go to bed early. Have another difficult day tomorrow. Sweet dreams, Noel said, watching her leave the kitchen. He waited until he heard the bath water running, then went to his computer and opened a secure email account he'd created that morning. The message he'd been expecting was already there, sent from an anonymous account. Package delivered. Target acquired. Proceeding to Phase 2. The message was from Rick, who'd spent the afternoon conducting surveillance on Colby's businesses. The intelligence report was thorough. 3 dealership locations, approximate number of employees, security systems, and most importantly, the names and addresses of Colby's business partners. One name stood out: Vincent Caruso, part owner of Duval Automotive's financing arm. According to Rick's research, Caruso had connections to several bankruptcy cases where car buyers had lost their homes after defaulting on Carnivore loans. He also had ties to a money laundering investigation that had been quietly dropped after key witnesses disappeared. Noel smiled as he deleted the email. If Colby wanted to play with dangerous people, he was about to learn what real danger looked like. The next morning, Noel arrived at the Duval mansion with a full crew and specialized equipment. The sewage cleanup was legitimate work. He'd never let his professional reputation suffer, even for revenge. But while his crew worked inside the house, Noel made some interesting discoveries in the basement. Hidden behind the water heater was a fireproof safe, its door slightly ajar. Inside, Noel found documents that made his blood run cold: loan applications with forged signatures, property deeds with altered names, and bank statements showing wire transfers to offshore accounts. But the most damning evidence was a folder labeled D. Merritt, Dana's maiden name. It contained copies of financial documents Noel had never seen before: a second mortgage application on their house, a business loan using Merritt Sanitation as collateral, and a life insurance policy he'd supposedly signed but never remembered. Dana and Colby weren't just having an affair. They were systematically stealing his life. Noel photographed every document with his phone, then carefully returned them to the safe. He left the door slightly open, exactly as he'd found it. When Colby discovered the evidence was gone, he'd suspect someone had been in his house. But he'd have no proof, and the paranoia would eat him alive. By evening, the Duval mansion was habitable again, though it would need weeks of additional work to remove the odor completely. Colby paid the cleanup fee in cash, counting out $50,000 with shaking hands. "This stays between us, right?" Colby asked as Noel loaded his equipment. "Of course. Though I have to ask, any idea who might have done this to you?" "I've been thinking about it all day. There's this guy, Vincent Caruso. We had a falling out over some business deals. He's got connections, if you know what I mean. Sounds like someone you don't want to cross." "That's just it. I didn't cross him. At least I don't think I did. But lately, he's been asking questions about some of our financing arrangements. Getting pushy about wanting to review our books." Noel pretended to consider this. "Maybe he's trying to send you a message." "What kind of message?" "The kind that says, 'Pay attention.' In my business, when someone's system backs up, it's usually because they've been ignoring problems for too long. Maybe this Caruso guy is telling you to fix whatever's wrong before it gets worse." Colby's face went pale. "You think he'd do something like this again?" "Depends on how serious the problem is. But if someone went to this much trouble to get your attention, they're probably not done making their point." That night, Noel sat in his home office reviewing the photographs from Colby's safe. The documents painted a clear picture. Dana had been feeding Colby inside information about Noel's business and personal finances for months. They'd used that information to set up fraudulent loans and insurance policies, planning to cash out after Dana filed for divorce. But the most shocking discovery was a handwritten note in Dana's handwriting. "N's accident policy pays double if passing occurs during work hours. Loading dock incident would be easy to arrange." They weren't just planning to steal from him. They were planning to eliminate him. Noel stared at the note until the words blurred together. 15 years of marriage, and his wife was plotting his homicide for insurance money. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that he felt something cold and final settle in his chest. He opened his laptop and began typing an email to Vincent Caruso. If Colby wanted to blame his sewage problems on a dangerous criminal, Noel was happy to make the introduction. Vincent Caruso agreed to meet at a truck stop outside town, neutral ground where they could talk without being seen. He was exactly what Noel had expected. Mid-50s, overweight, wearing a tracksuit and gold chains. The kind of man who'd eliminate you for disrespecting his mother, then send flowers to your funeral. "You got some information about Colby Duvall?" Caruso asked, sliding into the booth across from Noel. "I got some information that might interest you. Seems like your business partner has been creative with the bookkeeping." Noel slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photocopies of the documents from Colby's safe, the forged loan applications, the offshore accounts, the fraudulent insurance policies. Caruso examined the papers, his expression growing darker with each page. "This little prick's been skimming from our operation." "Looks like it. The insurance fraud alone is worth 10 years in federal prison." "Federal prison's too good for him. You know what we do to people who steal from us?" "I can imagine. But here's the thing. I don't want him dead. I want him ruined." Caruso looked up from the documents. "What's your angle in this?" "He's been screwing my wife. I could have him eliminated, but that would be too easy. I want him to lose everything. His business, his money, his reputation, his marriage. I want him to live with the consequences of his choices. And you want me to help you do it. I want you to collect what he owes you. How you do that is your business." Caruso smiled, showing gold teeth. "I like your style. What do you want in return?" 20% of whatever you recover from him. And I want to be there when you confront him." "Deal." They shook hands across the table, and Noel felt the final piece of his plan click into place. In 3 days, Vincent Caruso would pay a visit to Duvall Automotive. By the time he was finished, Colby would be lucky to escape with his life. Dana had been acting strange all week, jumpier than usual, constantly checking her phone, taking calls in private. On Friday evening, she announced she was going out with friends from work. "Where are you going?" Noel asked. "Just dinner and drinks, girls' night out." "Which friends?" "You don't know them. Sarah and Michelle from the office." Another lie. Noel had called Dana's office that afternoon, asking to speak with Sarah or Michelle. The receptionist told him no one by those names worked there. "Have fun," he said, kissing her forehead. "Drive safely." Dana left at 7 o'clock, wearing a short red dress and high heels. Noel waited 15 minutes, then followed her in his work truck, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She didn't go to a restaurant. Instead, she drove to the Clearwater Lake Resort and parked in the back lot, away from the main entrance. Noel watched her walk to a ground floor room where Colby was waiting with the door open. They kissed passionately, hands roaming over each other's bodies with desperate hunger. Then Colby pulled her inside and closed the door. Noel parked his truck and walked to the motel office. The desk clerk was a college kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "I need to rent a room," Noel said. "For how long?" "Just a couple hours. I'm meeting someone." The kid quoted the rate and Noel paid cash. "Can I get a room with a view of the lake?" "Sure. Room 218, second floor. You'll have a perfect view of the whole resort." Room 218 had a small balcony that overlooked the parking lot and ground floor rooms. Noel set up a digital camera with a telephoto lens, then settled in to wait. He didn't have to wait long. At 8:30, the door to room 108 opened and Dana stepped out, adjusting her dress. She looked around nervously, then walked to her car. But instead of leaving, she sat in the driver's seat and made a phone call. Through the camera's zoom lens, Noel could read her lips. "It's done. He signed everything." What had Colby signed? Noel photographed Dana's license plate and the motel room number, then packed up his equipment. Whatever they were planning, it was happening soon. Monday morning brought the answer. Noel arrived at his office to find a process server waiting with legal documents. The papers were from Dana's lawyer, divorce petition, temporary restraining order, and a motion to freeze all business assets pending litigation. According to the filing, Dana claimed Noel had threatened her with physical violence and used his sanitation business to intimidate her clients. She was requesting immediate possession of their house, half of all business assets, and spousal support of $8,000 per month. The restraining order prohibited Noel from coming within 500 feet of Dana or their home. Violation would result in immediate arrest. Tom Kellerman reviewed the documents in his office, shaking his head. "This is brutal. She's claiming you threatened to bury her like garbage, and that you've been stalking her with your work vehicles. Pure fiction." "I know that, but she's got witnesses. 3 people who claim they heard you make threatening statements." "Who are the witnesses?" Tom flipped through the papers. "Sarah Mitchell, Michelle Ross, and..." He paused. "Colby Duvall. She's been planning this for months." "It gets worse. She's also filed a complaint with the county health department claiming your business has been violating safety regulations. If they find violations, they can shut you down immediately." Noel felt the familiar cold calculation settling over him. "When's the hearing?" "Friday. Until then, you can't go home, can't contact her, and can't interfere with her business activities." "What about my business?" "The asset freeze only applies to joint accounts. If you've got business accounts in the company name only, those are probably safe. But I'd move fast. She might try to expand the order." Noel left the law office and drove to his bank, where he transferred every available dollar to accounts Dana couldn't touch. Then he called Rick and told him to implement their emergency plan. All business operations would run through Rick's name until the legal situation was resolved. As he drove through town, Noel's phone rang. The caller ID showed Vincent Caruso's number. "We got a problem," Caruso said when Noel answered. "What kind of problem?" "Your boy Duvall ain't at his dealership. Nobody's seen him since Friday. His wife says he's on a business trip, but his employees are getting nervous. Seems like he cleaned out the company safe before he disappeared." "How much did he take?" $250,000 in cash, plus whatever he had in his personal accounts." Guy's running scared. Noel thought about Dana's phone call at the motel. It's done. He signed everything. She'd convinced Colby to liquidate his assets before disappearing. They were planning to skip town together, leaving their spouses to deal with the mess. "I know where he is," Noel said. "Where? Give me 24 hours. Then you'll have your money." The Clearwater Lake Resort sat on 50 acres of prime waterfront property, but most of the buildings were clustered near the main lodge. The rental cabins were scattered through the woods, accessible only by narrow dirt roads, perfect for people who wanted privacy. Noel spent Tuesday morning surveying the resort from his truck, using binoculars to identify which cabins were occupied. At noon, he spotted Dana's BMW parked behind cabin 17, partially hidden by pine trees. He waited until evening, then drove to the cabin access road and parked his truck behind a maintenance shed. The area was deserted. Most tourists avoided the resort after Labor Day, and the few remaining guests stayed near the heated lodge. Cabin 17 was a rustic log structure with a stone fireplace and wraparound porch. Warm light glowed through the windows, and Noel could hear music playing inside. He crept closer, staying in the shadows of the surrounding trees. Through the kitchen window, he could see Dana and Colby sitting at a small table, sharing a bottle of wine. Several suitcases were stacked near the door, and documents were spread across the table. Plane tickets, bank statements, and what looked like foreign passports. Dana was wearing a diamond necklace Noel had never seen before, probably bought with stolen money. She was laughing at something Colby had said, her head thrown back in genuine happiness. It was the same laugh she'd given Noel on their wedding day, before 15 years of marriage had turned it into something cold and calculating. Colby raised his wine glass in a toast. To new beginnings. To getting everything we deserve, Dana replied, clinking her glass against his. They kissed across the table, then began clearing the documents. Through the window, Noel could see plane tickets to Costa Rica, where no extradition treaty would protect them from American law enforcement. They were planning to disappear forever, leaving him to face fraud charges and business ruin. Noel pulled out his phone and sent a text message to Vincent Caruso. Clearwater Lake Resort, Cabin 17, come alone. Then he settled back into the shadows to wait. Caruso arrived an hour later, driving a black sedan with tinted windows. He parked behind Noel's truck and walked over, moving surprisingly quietly for a man his size. "They inside?" he whispered. "Both of them. Looks like they're packing to leave the country." "Perfect. Here's how we're going to play this. You go to the front door, get them to open up. I'll come in through the back. We corner them, get my money. Then you do whatever you want with your cheating wife." "What if they don't open the door?" "They'll open it. You're going to tell them there's been an accident." Noel walked to the front porch and knocked on the door. "Dana, it's me. I need to talk to you." The music stopped. He could hear whispered voices, then footsteps approaching the door. "Go away, Noel," Dana called through the wood. "I have a restraining order. You're not supposed to be here." "There's been an accident. Your sister's in the hospital." Dana had always been close to her sister Karen, who lived in Oregon with her husband and 2 kids. The news would hit her hard enough to override her caution. The door opened halfway, revealing Dana's worried face. "What kind of accident? Is she okay?" "Car accident on Interstate 5. She's in critical condition. The hospital's been trying to reach you for hours." Dana stepped onto the porch, her phone already in her hand. "I need to call the hospital." "Which one is she at?" "Good Samaritan in Portland. But Dana, there's something else." "What? I know about the money. I know about the insurance policies. I know about everything." Dana's face went white. She stepped backward, reaching for the door handle, but Noel grabbed her wrist. "Let me go," she screamed. The back door exploded open, and Vincent Caruso stepped inside, pointing a chrome pistol at Colby's chest. "Nobody move. Nobody breathe funny. We're all going to have a nice, quiet conversation." Colby had been standing near the kitchen table, wine glass still in his hand. The glass shattered on the floor as his hand started shaking. "Vincent, I can explain." "Shut up." Caruso's voice was calm, professional. "Sit down. Both of you." Noel pushed Dana into the cabin and closed the front door behind them. The romantic atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by the kind of tension that preceded violence. Dana and Colby sat side by side on the couch, holding hands like frightened children. "Vincent, whatever Noel told you, it's not true," Colby said. "He's been maltreating us for weeks. He sabotaged my house. He's been following Dana." I said shut up. Caruso pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "This is a statement from your bookkeeper. Real interesting reading. Turns out you've been skimming from our operation for 8 months. $250,000 in cash, plus another $100,000 in phony expense reports." "That's impossible. I've never stolen anything from you." "Really? Then explain this." Caruso unfolded the paper and began reading. "Payments to Clearwater Lake Resort under the heading Client Entertainment. Payments to jewelry stores under Business Gifts. Payments to travel agencies for trips to Costa Rica." Dana's grip on Colby's hand tightened. "We can explain all of that." "I'm sure you can, sweetheart. But here's the thing. I don't give a crap about your explanations. I want my money back, with interest. You got exactly 60 seconds to tell me where it is." Colby pointed to the suitcases near the door. "Most of it's in there. Cash and bearer bonds. Maybe 200,000 total." "Most of it? The rest is in offshore accounts. I can transfer it back, but I need computer access." Caruso nodded to Noel. "Check the bags." Noel unzipped the largest suitcase, revealing neat stacks of $100 bills and several manila envelopes. The money was real, more cash than most people saw in a lifetime. He also found jewelry, gold coins, and documents for bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. "Looks like they were planning a permanent vacation," Noel said. "Over my dead body." Caruso sat down across from the couch, keeping his tool trained on Colby. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer every stolen penny back to our accounts. Then you're going to sign over your dealerships as compensation for the trouble you've caused me. Then maybe I let you live. I can't sign over the dealerships, Colby protested. They're jointly owned. Vincent, you're a partner. You know the paperwork? I ain't your partner anymore. I dissolved our partnership this morning. Filed papers with the state saying you've been embezzling and I want out before the feds get involved. Dana spoke for the first time since Caruso had entered. What about me? I didn't steal anything from you. No, but you helped him do it. And you've been stealing from your husband here. That makes you an accessory. I want a lawyer, Caruso laughed. Honey, lawyers can't help you now. You got two choices. Cooperate and maybe see tomorrow, or keep lying and definitely don't. Noel pulled out his phone and showed them the photographs from Colby's safe. The insurance policies, the forged loan applications, the plan to eliminate me. I documented everything. Dana stared at the images, her face crumpling. Noel, I never meant for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be what? A quick homicide for the insurance money? It wasn't homicide. It was going to look like an accident, a loading dock incident, something industrial. Nobody would have suspected anything. Colby turned to stare at her. You never told me about any homicide plan. Because you would have said no. You're too weak for the hard choices. Hard choices? Noel's voice was deadly quiet. You call ending your husband a hard choice? I call it practical. You were never going to give me the life I deserved. This way, I'd get everything at once. The insurance money, the business, the house, clean and simple. Caruso whistled softly. Lady, you are one cold bitch. Remind me never to get married. Dana's mask of helplessness fell away, revealing the calculating hunter underneath. Don't act like you're better than me, Vincent. You've eliminated people for money. At least I was going to eliminate someone I knew. Yeah, but I eliminate people who deserve it. Your husband here seems like a decent guy. Decent? Dana laughed bitterly. He's a garbage man who thinks he's better than everyone else. He spends his days covered in other people's crap, then comes home expecting to be treated like a king. Noel felt something snap inside his chest. I built a business from nothing. I gave you everything you wanted. You gave me a middle-class life in a middle-class town with a middle-class man. I wanted more, so you decided to steal it. I decided to take what I deserved. And if you hadn't been so pathetically naive, you never would have found out. Colby was staring at Dana like he'd never seen her before. You're insane. This whole thing is insane. Vincent, I'll give you back every penny, but I'm not signing over my businesses. Those dealerships employ 60 people. 60 people who are going to lose their jobs anyway when the feds shut you down for fraud. Caruso stood up and walked to the window. You know what? I'm getting tired of talking. Let's speed this up. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Yeah, it's me. Bring the van around to cabin 17. We got some garbage to dispose of. Dana's confidence finally cracked. What van? What are you talking about? Well, sweetheart, you and your boyfriend here have caused me a lot of problems. I got federal investigators asking questions, I got my other partners demanding answers, and I got a reputation to maintain. Sometimes the only solution is to make problems disappear. You can't just eliminate us. People will ask questions. What people? You filed for divorce and ran off to Costa Rica with your lover. Happens all the time. Nobody's going to look too hard for a cheating wife and a crooked car dealer. Noel watched the terror spread across Dana's face and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no sympathy. She'd planned to homicide him for money, and now she was facing the same fate. Please, she whispered. I'll do anything. I'll give back everything we took. Too late for that. Caruso checked his watch. My guys will be here in 10 minutes. That gives us just enough time to transfer those offshore accounts. Colby opened his laptop with shaking hands. The login information is in my phone. Username and password for each account. Make it fast. As Colby began typing, Dana turned to Noel with desperate eyes. You can't let him eliminate me. Whatever I did, I'm still your wife. My wife died the day you decided to have me ended. I never meant it. It was just talk, just fantasy. I would never have actually gone through with it. Noel pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Dana's voice came through the speaker, clear and unmistakable. The insurance policy pays double if he dies during work hours. An accident at the loading dock would be easy to arrange. Make it look like equipment failure. The recording continued for 3 minutes, with Dana and Colby discussing the best way to eliminate Noel and collect the insurance money. They'd even researched which types of industrial accidents were hardest to investigate. Still think it was just fantasy? Noel asked. Dana had no answer. She sat on the couch, crying silently, as Colby transferred the stolen money back to Vincent's accounts. The laptop screen showed hundreds of thousands of dollars moving across international borders with the click of a mouse. Done, Colby said. Every account is emptied. You got your money back. Plus interest? Plus 50,000 in penalties. Everything I had. Caruso walked over to check the laptop screen. Good boy. Now the dealership paperwork. Vincent, please. Those businesses are my life. Should have thought about that before you started stealing from me. A van pulled up outside the cabin, its headlights sweeping across the windows. Caruso looked out and nodded to someone in the driver's seat. Time to go, he announced. Dana grabbed Noel's arm. Please don't let them take me. I know I hurt you, but we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over. Noel looked down at her hand on his arm. The same hand that had signed fraudulent documents and planned his homicide. The same hand that had caressed another man while plotting to destroy everything Noel had built. He gently removed her fingers from his sleeve. There's nothing to work out. 2 men entered the cabin, large, quiet men who looked like they'd done this before. They zip-tied Dana's and Colby's hands behind their backs, then guided them toward the door. Wait, Noel said. I want to say something first. Caruso nodded. Make it quick. Noel looked at Dana and Colby, memorizing their terrified faces. You thought you were so smart. You thought you could steal from me, lie to me, plan to homicide me, and I'd never figure it out. You thought I was just some dumb garbage man who couldn't see past your pretty faces and smooth talk. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. But here's what you never understood. I've been cleaning up messes my whole life. I know how to identify problems, how to trace them to their source, and how to eliminate them permanently. Dana was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks. Please. You wanted to flush me down the drain like garbage. Instead, you flushed yourselves. The men escorted Dana and Colby out of the cabin. Through the window, Noel watched them being loaded into the van. Dana looked back once, her eyes pleading for mercy that would never come. The van drove away into the darkness, carrying his problems to their final disposal site. Caruso holstered his tool and picked up one of the suitcases. This has been educational. Your wife's got balls, I'll give her that. Shame she's crazy. What happens now? Now? You go home and live your life. File a missing persons report in a few days. Act worried about your cheating wife. The cops will investigate, but they won't find anything. People disappear all the time. And the business? Duval Automotive belongs to me now. I'll run it clean. No more carnivory loans or money laundering. Just legitimate car sales. Caruso headed for the door, then paused. You know, Noel, you handled this better than most men would. You could have gone to the police, could have tried to work things out. Instead, you understood that some problems require permanent solutions. I learned a long time ago that pressure builds until something gives way. Smart man. If you ever want a job that pays better than sanitation, give me a call. After Caruso left, Noel sat alone in the cabin for several minutes. The wine glasses still sat on the table, lipstick stains marking where Dana had been drinking and laughing about their plans. The documents were scattered across the floor. Plane tickets to Costa Rica, bank statements showing stolen money, forged insurance policies. He gathered everything into a pile and burned it in the fireplace. The flames consumed 15 years of marriage, months of betrayal, and dreams of a future that would never happen. When the fire died down, Noel locked the cabin and drove home. Not to the house he'd shared with Dana, but to the small apartment above his business office. It wasn't much, just a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchenette. But it was clean and honest, and entirely his own. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat at his desk, reviewing the paperwork Tom Kellerman had filed. With Dana gone, the divorce proceedings would be dismissed. The restraining order would become irrelevant. The asset freeze would be lifted. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Rick's number. Boss, I've been monitoring the police scanner. Nothing about missing persons or suspicious activity. Looks like our friends disappeared without a trace. Good. What's the status on our contracts? All the county deals are secure. I talked to the health inspector. Dana's complaint was dismissed when she failed to show up for the hearing. We're clear to resume normal operations. Then that's what we'll do. Normal operations. Noel hung up and finished his whiskey. Outside, his work truck sat in the parking lot, ready for tomorrow's jobs. There would always be more messes to clean up, more systems to repair, more pressure to relieve. But from now on, the only pressure he'd have to worry about was the mechanical kind. 3 weeks later, Noel filed a missing persons report. He told the police that Dana had left for a business trip and never returned. Her car was found abandoned at the airport, suggesting she'd left town voluntarily. The investigation was perfunctory. Dana had a history of erratic behavior, and there was evidence of marital problems. The case was classified as a voluntary disappearance and quietly closed. Colby Duvall's disappearance received more attention, given his business prominence, but the investigation revealed his money laundering activities and connections to Vincent Caruso. The FBI assumed he'd fled to avoid prosecution, and the case was transferred to their financial crimes division. No bodies were ever found. Noel sold the house he'd shared with Dana and moved permanently into his apartment above the office. He expanded Merritt Sanitation into commercial waste management and industrial cleanup, becoming one of the most successful contractors in the region. He never remarried. On quiet evenings, he sometimes thought about the night at the cabin. Not about Dana's tears or Colby's pleas, but about the moment when Dana's mask had finally fallen away. The moment when she'd revealed herself as someone who could plan homicide for money, who could betray 15 years of marriage without a second thought. He'd loved that woman for most of his adult life, but that woman had never really existed. What existed was a hunter who'd seen him as prey, a calculator who'd measured his worth in insurance payouts and business assets. She'd made the mistake of thinking he was weak, that his honest work and quiet demeanor meant he couldn't fight back. She'd learned too late that the man who cleaned up other people's messes was very good at cleaning up his own. 6 months after Dana's disappearance, Noel was working late at the office when his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Merritt Sanitation," he answered. "Mr. Merritt? This is Detective Sarah Walsh with the state police. I'm calling about your wife's missing persons case." Noel's blood went cold. "Have you found something?" "We've received some new information that might be relevant. Would you be available to come in for questioning tomorrow morning?" "Of course. Is there anything you can tell me now?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you be at the station at 9 a.m.? "I'll be there." Noel hung up and stared at the phone. After 6 months of silence, what could the police have discovered? Had someone found evidence at the cabin? Had Vincent Caruso been arrested and decided to cooperate? He spent the night reviewing every detail of his plan, looking for weaknesses. But he'd been careful. No electronic communications, no witnesses, no physical evidence linking him to the disappearances. Even if they suspected him, suspicion wasn't proof. The next morning, Noel arrived at the state police station wearing his best suit. Detective Walsh was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes, the kind of cop who'd seen everything and believed nothing until it was proven. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Merritt. I know this must be difficult for you. Anything that might help find Dana. It's been 6 months with no word." "That's actually what I wanted to discuss. We've been reviewing your wife's case file, and something doesn't add up." Detective Walsh opened a manila folder and spread several photographs across the table. They showed Dana's abandoned BMW, the airport parking lot where it was found, and security camera footage from the terminal. "Your wife's car was found in long-term parking on October 15th, 3 days after you reported her missing. But here's the interesting part. The parking ticket shows she entered the lot on October 12th at 2:47 p.m. I don't understand. What's significant about that? According to your statement, you last saw your wife on the evening of October 11th, when she left for a business trip. But the parking ticket suggests she didn't go to the airport until the following afternoon." Noel frowned, pretending to process this information. "Maybe she stayed overnight somewhere else first? She did that sometimes when she had early morning flights." "That's possible, but we've checked with all the hotels near the airport, and none of them have any record of a Dana Merritt checking in on October 11th or 12th. Detective Walsh produced another photograph, security footage from the airport terminal. The image was grainy, but it clearly showed a woman who looked like Dana walking through the departure gate area. "We've also discovered that your wife never boarded a flight. This footage shows someone who resembles her entering the terminal, but there's no record of any ticket purchase or boarding pass scan." "I don't understand. If she didn't fly anywhere, where did she go?" "That's what we're trying to figure out. It's possible someone wanted us to think she left town voluntarily." The detective leaned back in her chair, studying Noel's face. Mr. Merritt, I have to ask, was your marriage having problems? Every marriage has problems, but nothing that would make her just disappear. We've been reviewing your wife's financial records. There are some irregularities, large cash withdrawals, payments to unfamiliar accounts, transfers to offshore banks. Did you know about any of this? Noel shook his head. Dana handled most of our personal finances. I focused on the business accounts. She also took out a life insurance policy on you 6 months before she disappeared. $2 million with her as the sole beneficiary. Were you aware of that? No, I wasn't, but insurance agents are always calling. Maybe she thought it was a good idea. Detective Walsh made a note in her file. The timing seems unusual, given that she disappeared shortly afterward. You think Dana had something to do with her own disappearance? I think your wife was involved in some questionable financial activities. It's possible she left town to avoid consequences. What kind of consequences? We've been working with the FBI on a money laundering investigation. Several local businesses were involved in washing cash through real estate transactions. Your wife's name has come up in connection with some of these deals. Noel tried to look shocked. Money laundering? That's impossible. Dana was a loan officer, not a criminal. Loan officers are in a perfect position to facilitate money laundering. They have access to financial records, they can manipulate paperwork, and they can identify properties suitable for cash transactions. The detective showed him more documents. Bank statements, loan applications, property transfers. All of them bore Dana's signature or initials. We believe your wife was working with a criminal organization to clean illegal money through legitimate real estate deals. When the FBI started investigating, she may have decided to disappear rather than face prosecution. So you think she's alive? I think it's possible. But if she's alive, she's probably living under a false identity in a country that doesn't extradite to the United States. Detective Walsh gathered the documents and returned them to the folder. Mr. Merritt, if your wife contacts you, and I mean if, not when, you need to call us immediately. She's wanted for questioning in a federal investigation. Of course, I just want to know what happened to her. We all do. Thank you for your time. Noel left the police station feeling simultaneously relieved and concerned. The authorities suspected Dana of criminal activity, which explained her disappearance and reduced suspicion about foul play. But they were still investigating, still asking questions, still looking for answers. He drove back to his office and called Tom Kellerman. They think Dana was involved in money laundering, he told his lawyer friend. That actually makes sense, given what we found in her financial records. If the FBI was closing in, she might have decided to run. Do you think they suspect me of anything? Doesn't sound like it. You're the sufferer here, the husband, who was left behind. As long as you don't do anything suspicious, you should be fine. What would be considered suspicious? Don't celebrate too openly. Don't start dating immediately. Don't make any major financial changes. Act like a man whose wife disappeared mysteriously. Noel hung up and returned to work. A water main had burst on Cedar Street, flooding 3 businesses and backing up sewage into the basement of an apartment building. It was the kind of emergency that required immediate attention, and the kind of work that kept his mind occupied. As he directed the cleanup crew, Noel thought about Detective Walsh's theory. The police believed Dana had voluntarily disappeared to avoid prosecution for money laundering. It was a logical conclusion, supported by evidence of her criminal activities. They had no idea she was dead, buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in the mountains outside town. They had no idea Colby was buried beside her. They had no idea Vincent Caruso had eliminated 2 problems permanently and efficiently. The investigation would continue for a while, but eventually it would be classified as a cold case. Dana would become another person who'd simply vanished, leaving behind more questions than answers. And Noel would go on with his life, cleaning up messes and solving problems, secure in the knowledge that the biggest mess of all had been permanently disposed of. By evening, the Cedar Street cleanup was complete. Noel stood in the empty street, watching his crew load equipment into their trucks. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky deep orange and purple. It was beautiful in a way that made him think about second chances and new beginnings. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Job well done. Consider our business concluded. VC. Noel deleted the message and walked to his truck. Vincent Caruso was a professional who understood the value of discretion. There would be no further contact, no demands for additional favors, no complications from their brief partnership. Dana and Colby were gone. The money had been recovered. The investigation was heading in the wrong direction. Justice had been served in the most permanent way possible. As Noel drove home through the quiet streets of Clinton Ridge, he felt something he hadn't experienced in months: peace. The pressure that had been building in his life had finally been released. The system had been purged of its blockages. Everything was flowing smoothly again. He parked behind his building and climbed the stairs to his apartment. The space was small but comfortable, furnished with simple furniture and decorated with photos from his army days. It was the home of a man who'd found contentment in honest work and simple pleasures. Noel poured himself a whiskey and sat at his kitchen table, reviewing invoices from the day's jobs. Tomorrow there would be more work, more pipes to clear, more systems to repair, more problems to solve. But tonight, for the first time in months, he could relax completely. His revenge was complete. Dana and Colby had paid the ultimate price for their betrayal. The police were investigating a crime that would never be solved. His business was thriving, his reputation was intact, and his future was entirely his own. Noel raised his glass in a silent toast to the memory of his marriage. Not the lie it had become, but the honest partnership it had once been. Then he finished his drink and went to bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time since discovering Dana's affair. Outside, the night was quiet except for the distant sound of flowing water, storm drains carrying away the day's rainfall, sewage systems processing the town's waste, irrigation channels feeding the farmland beyond the city limits. Everything flowing where it was supposed to go, under pressure but under control, part of a system that worked because someone understood how to maintain it properly. In Clinton Ridge, that someone was Noel Merritt, and his work was finally done. The end.